The following video contains controversial opinions and shitposting.
Huh? Electricity.
Oh yeah, it's so hot.
Who goes there? Zap!
Swiggity swooty, I am coming for the booty.
One zap from me will kill you quick, so...
I will find you. I will kill you.
Hello there, my fellow tenno. Come seeking more advice from a Florida man today. Now this video is going to be a very different one because I have shed my text-to-speech shell and am utilizing my unholy voice that you must now endure. So if you have two eyeballs and have read the name of this video, we are going to be covering the electric ballerina, Gyre. Now to be brutally honest, for those who want to know what I think of this frame right from the get-go, I think she is very bad and she desperately needs an update of some kind.
You're a fucking idiot!
But I still think she is very fun and can dish out more damage than the numbers that you'll see in your savings account in your entire life. So if that's the case, why call her bad? Well, we'll get to that later on with the builds. But much like with the previous guides, let's go over her acquisition first. So Gyre, much like every other frame, has two methods of acquiring. The first is by shelving out your hard-earned cash and sipping for digital extremes, or by progressing through the main story and completing the Angels of the Zariman questline in order to unlock the ability to farm her. None of her parts or her main blueprint drop from the quest itself, and instead come from the different bounty tiers on the Zariman. And since they all have a drop rate of about 13% or less, you can expect to get her after, say, 20 hours of farming, and her materials require probably another 20 hours as well. So I really, really hope you like grinding. Anyway, if the 40 hours of misery didn't turn you off, we can go on to her powers and passive. Gyre's passive is pretty unique, where electric procs on an enemy allow her abilities to crit. 1 to 10 procs gives yellow crits, 11 to 20 give orange, and 21 or higher gives red. This crit chance is applied per enemy and works akin to critical modding, so 5 procs for example gives 50% chance of yellow crits, and if 0 procs on the enemy, no crits will happen. Kinda like my chances of finding a girlfriend.
Well, that's a lot of damage!
Sphere is Gyre's first power and is a really interesting power for a kit. On contact with the ground, the sphere will expand and any enemies in the area will become privy to electricity damage and electric procs the longer they remain in the field. So 3 of these AoEs can be out at a time, and if you hit multiple enemies with the initial sphere, the sphere's damage is enhanced. This power is pretty important for a kit because it allows Gyre to spread electric procs in a massive radius around a defensive target or just throughout the map. Especially important for her ultimate, which takes advantage of these electric procs. Soiled Horizon is an electric bowling ball that travels a certain distance based on the modded duration, and will explode pulling in nearby enemies. The explosion causes electricity damage in a 12-meter radius that is affected by mods. The ball itself can be detonated manually by holding the cast button again. And to cap it all off, this is Gyre's Subzoom and does not have any nerfs in its helmet form. However, this power is my biggest gripe with Gyre. Now, I'll explain it more when we get on to builds, like I said before, but just keep this in the back of your mind, that most of my problems with Gyre stem from this ability. Cathode Grace is a buff exclusive to Gyre that gives all her weapons and abilities a critical chance buff. In addition, she gets passive energy regen that scales with your power strength. The power has a low base duration, but kills with this ability active will add duration to the ability. When you activate this ability, a cooldown timer of 60 seconds goes into effect. This timer is to prevent you from reactivating the ability should you run out of duration before the 60 seconds passes. This ability and her ultimate Rotor Swell have a synergistic augment called Cathode Current that applies duration from kills to Rotor Swell and an additional Lightning Strike, dealing double damage. And to top it all off, we have Rotor Swell, an ability that causes Gyre to lift her skirt and unleash an AoE that electrifies enemies, and when any crit happens, they're hit with a bolt of lightning from the heavens. And these bolts will also chain to other enemies nearby, dealing increased damage. And now that we're done talking about our powers, we can move on to the builds. Yeah, remember what I said about Coil Horizon, my problems with this ability? Well, this is where we get to it. Remember this? Well, fucking forget it. You're not going to be using it. This is where we start getting on to the controversial bits. You see, when I rate frames and I review frames, I always look at it with the base kit. I don't take helmets into account most of the time. But unfortunately, Gyre is a special case because without a helmet, she literally can't do fucking anything in higher level content. And it is for this very reason that Gyre's kit can't function by itself without a helmet that I consider her to be a very bad frame. For example, take my main Limbo into account. Limbo's abilities all synergize perfectly with each other, providing excellent crowd control, excellent survivability because of the rift, as well as excellent energy sustainability because of his passive. Another good frame that takes this into account is Lavos. His abilities don't cost any energy to cast, he has excellent armor and healing, and he has excellent damage output, which makes him, in my opinion, a pretty underrated frame. When we look at Gyre, all she has is damage and energy sustainability. She doesn't have anything for crowd control outside the electric procs, but that's not enough. And she also doesn't have an armor strip to help her in higher level content. And she doesn't have any way of protecting herself. It is for this reason that people gravitate towards subsuming Coil Horizon, because it's the one part of her kit that isn't really necessary. But the fact that you need to use a subsume, a very, very expensive subsume might I add, because it's from Warframes like Hildren, it means that in order to make Gyre work at all, you need to use a different Warframe ability. The best part about a frame, or the most important about a frame, is that in order to make them work, you need a helmet ability from a completely different frame, a very expensive one, mind you. That's not the hallmarks of a good frame. That just shows that she is badly designed and she needs some kind of updates. What can I suggest? Well, maybe give a part of her kit the ability to armor strip or something, at the very least. Because shield gating you can do on Gyre, so survivability is for the most part covered, but armor strip in particular needs to be looked into more. Now with that said, like I said at the beginning of the video, I do think it's possible to make some pretty strong builds with her kit and subsumes. And with that said, let's move on to the builds. This first build that you see before you is the one that I've been showing in test footage throughout the video, and is overall the one that I consider to be the best of the bunch. It gives a good balance between duration and efficiency, while prioritizing some range and extremely high strengths, so that way Cathode Grace and Rotor Swell are at their strongest. This build does utilize Pillage, much like the second one that I'm about to show you that I had before I started recording this video. That unfortunately doesn't work that well because the low efficiency makes it hard to keep her energy up in higher level content because you're constantly having to spam her powers. So I find this lower range, higher strength build with higher efficiency is the better choice. Now I've already showed you a lot of the best builds throughout this video, so I'm going to show you the low efficiency, high range setup for a little bit, and you'll see some of the issues that can happen with this build. Such as here. You do get pretty good range, pretty good armor strip, and pretty good damage. But in certain panic situations, or just in general, you're constantly having to spam pillage in order to get the armor strip that you need. And now, if you have a high energy pool, this can't be too big of a problem, but there are times where I have gotten dangerously low in terms of energy. The second build utilizes Terrify over Coil Horizon, and it is overall a pretty good build, I would say. It gives excellent armor strip because of the low strength requirement, reach 100% strip with the ability. It gives excellent crowd control because the enemies running away, and subsequently the electric proc stunning them, keeping them in place, and it overall just does some pretty good damage. However, because Terrify is one of the few armor strips that does not work on Acolytes, it means that you, more likely than not, will get killed. And for this reason, I would only recommend using this build if you don't intend to encounter Acolytes, aka in non-endless missions.
Hey there, demons. It's me, your boy.
Alright, and that concludes the Florida Man's Guide to Gyre. I know that people are probably going to hate my take on Gyre. That's not to say that she's necessarily not fun to play, but calling her a good frame just isn't the case, given the problems with her design. Anyway, I hope you found my wisdom and understanding interesting and compelling to listen to, and thank you for your time.